quarantine, just covered.
I saw some random comic post where somebody was like sharing their collection, and they had some of the.
You okay?
Yeah, I'm coming in.
They had some Marvel Essentials, and it was like somebody commented like, "This is the first time I've seen Essentials, the word Essentials used in a while, not relating to the current situation."
Oh. Wow.
Well, it's the Sidekick Podcast, I guess.
Yeah.
This is the Sidekick Podcast. Didn't get new comics. So
no comic book shops are receiving comic book shipments on Wednesdays for an undetermined period of time.
we're not sure how long, but that's okay because we live in this comic book shop.
We have lots of comics to talk about anyway.
We have loads of comics. It seemed like a good opportunity to go through some of our favorite hidden gems.
Yeah. Hidden gems, maybe just some stuff that's snuck under the radar recently.
Yeah.
Maybe some older stuff that we just want to bring to light.
Things that we love that we're sitting in our pile and we go, we don't get to talk about that.
Yeah, outside of the big two.
Yeah, that was basically our parameter. It was like outside of the big two, stuff that when you think about like, I really love comics, like what are good examples of that? What are things you really liked that you have trouble finding?
Stuff you can order if you're feeling a little cabin fever.
I mean, in some cases.
Like
some of mine are from my own collection. Sorry, you can't have those.
No, you can eBay or Amazon. I'm not saying Diamond Comics if they're
No, your local comic shop may have one.
Mortal Kombat, but yeah. Give them a ring.
I mean, in a lot of cases. All right.
Who wants to start?
Harrison, you got a big stack.
Yeah,
You
I
should
got
pick one.
So we
Pick
got
one and start there, and then we'll go in turns.
So I got a little 4-issue miniseries sitting right on top here. We got Stray Toasters.
That's a great title, by the way.
Yeah, it's art and story by Bill Sienkiewicz.
So it's not the sequel to Brave Little Toaster.
Oh, not quite. It's a lot more. It's a lot darker than that. It's like
It's very beautiful.
the artwork's incredible. So basically, this was published in late 80s, I want to say, like 88. Yes, 88. Under Epic Comics. Bill Sienkiewicz I was like right before or right after his work on New Mutants was picking up. But it's
interesting.
But anyway, he does the story and artwork on this 4-issue miniseries. I picked this up at Silver Snail recently. Not recently, because stores are closed recently, but a while ago.
Yeah.
But anyway,
semi-recently.
it's a weird story. It's not for the faint of heart. It has some graphic stuff in it for sure. And it's very like non-linear with its storytelling. Like you can tell, like Bill Sienkiewicz just wanted to do like a bunch of wacky artwork and made like a story that goes along with it. I don't like the
Yeah, what's it about?
What's the story about?
Yeah.
Let's go with that.
Break it
So
down
basically,
for
it's like a psychological horror murder mystery.
Because I think I saw one human flipping through all that.
The main character is a renowned criminal psychologist who's been locked up in a criminal psychiatric facility for a crime he may or may not have committed, and basically they bring him out to get him to help solve this new string of murders that's happening.
Whoa.
And mothers are being murdered, children are disappearing, and it's being done by like a big robot with a toaster for a head. There's just like this one. You get the artwork is weird. Bill Sienkiewicz was really getting into his experimental stuff. Like he was very like Neil Adams and stuff. His run on Moon Knight, everybody drink. Was awesome, but like he was definitely still developing his own style during it. And if you've ever seen his work and you're like, this is really cool, wacky, like non-conformative artwork, then find this book.
Skips between like charcoals and then like ink drawings and then like full like gouache paintings almost.
Yeah.
It's really, really varied. I don't think I've seen anything that sort of flits between styles in this way in quite some time.
I would really like to read this. Yes.
Yeah, please borrow it. But like here's our sort of antagonist guy here. He's like got a big pinstripe suit on. He's got a toaster for a head. He's got like a factory sticking out his back and electrodes for hands.
I mean, I'll take it. And that means things that you're definitely going
We'll get a
to
photo.
recognize that protagonist even when the style switches a whole ton.
But it's definitely it's very much a mood piece. Like it's moved forward more by plot pieces and philosophy and stuff rather than like character development and relationships.
It's
I guess
a gritty 80s comic.
Yeah, like it's violent. It's got like a big blue guy who's like attached to a wheelchair who's like has birds feed him. Like that's a dude. Like he's gross. He's very, very gross.
Forgive me, what's gouache painting?
It's like sort of that matte like it's paint used more for design than for artwork.
Okie dokie.
Yeah.
And look at this gorgeous like black for the fourth cover.
Black on black.
But yeah, so essentially this criminal psychologist is trying to figure out what the hell's happening while also like trying to sort out his own mind, which is not entirely intact. He's dealing with his own fractured relationship while trying to track down this like robot.
Whoa.
And figure out what the nature of this robot is.
And it's 4 parts, yes?
Yes, it's 4 parts.
So
the my criticism for this book is that like read it twice because the main thing is it's really sometimes hard to tell who's saying what. There's a lot of speech bubbles or like speech panels that do not have tales leading to anyone. There's a lot of narration where you're wondering who's saying this. And there's also like an unrelated plot throughout it where it's just like a devil is coming up to Earth to like get some souls to take back home to his family. And it's just like postcards between him and his family where it's like, hey dad, bring me a lawyer, a divorce one, because they're extra slimy. Like, and, like Phil the demon just like writing back like, wow, people up here sure are terrible and they blame it on us. Like it's just like a strange, non-linear, edgy, late 80s, early 90s, violent book of nonsensical paintings that's also crime. It's weird. It's wacky. It's hard to follow, but like it's worth following if you're into that sort of things. Yeah.
Published by Epic Comics.
Yep, it's by Epic.
Nice. Cool.
But like the main draw of this for me was that
It was a toaster for
I
Red.
love Bill Sienkiewicz because I collect Moon Knight stuff, and I love his wacky, really experimental stuff. And I feel like because he wrote this as well, that was just as much of like him that I was going to get. And I feel like I definitely got what I paid for.
Yeah, fair.
For sure. 1988.
88, yeah.
Right on.
All right.
Chris.
Yeah.
So do we like take it off the pile now?
Yeah, sure.
Get it out of the way?
Yeah, we can try and clear the table
Yeah.
a little bit. So where do I even start? I read so many comics, guys. All right. So I'll start with the thing that came out most recently, and then go from there. So if you don't listen to the Sidekick podcast regularly, we did talk about this a lot when it was coming out in single issues. Now it's concluded. This is Brian Michael Bendis's Pearl. This is a Jinx World title, so he did a bunch of work with DC Comics and sort of like was working on this imprint at the same time. So our big criticism was that his big sort of character work was not very good, but he did sneak these indie books in there that were phenomenal. So I feel like there was a lot of like, here's what Brian Michael Bendis is doing, and it was all focused on like the sort of big characters he was working on. He was working on Superman. So no one was really paying attention to the other things he was working on, which was this and Cover. I preferred this book, Pearl. So this story follows a young girl whose mother ran a tattoo studio for the Yakuza, and her mother passes away. She's sort of trying to keep the studio open. She's a very, very talented artist. Sort of the scenario unfolds that she kills someone, and then the Yakuza decide that maybe they're going to use that as an opportunity to have her as like sort of a working gun, or use her shop to sort of like become like a home base for seedier operations. She doesn't want any of that, and she doesn't really understand how the gangs work, and also her father was involved, but he's now in jail, so she's trying to figure out if she can leverage what she's doing to kind of get her dad out of jail. She falls in love. It's like a very sort of new romance. How does she keep the memory of her mother and her new sort of relationship alive while also dealing with becoming a gang member? And the art in this is super beautiful. The motif of the sort of like tattooing world, and like the fact that she has kind of like this white ink tattoo that is only visible when she gets stressed or flushed. It's just like a very, very interesting way of showing sort of like anxiety and doing a coming of age story. They do go to Japan. They do sort of deal with sort of like the gang lore there. She does try to escape entirely. It's not one of those things where she gets more and more horrible. Like, I kind of expected it to do like more of a Breaking Bad.
Mm-hmm.
Where,
yeah,
like,
but she more or less inherited.
Yeah, but
like that's.
But her like hesitance and like naivete is intact and apparent through the story, and she uses it to her advantage. And the way that the story ends isn't like, oh, and then she died, and then she became just as bad as the people that she was trying to get away from. It ends on a note that I think was very brave and very believable. So I just really commend this series for being kind of like a limited run, and also not doing what I expected, and also being very, very beautiful. Michael Gaydos is really painterly and careful about the way that he illustrates this book.
Oh, it's very
And
abstract and colorful. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, but still like narrative and cinematic. You can always tell who's talking or what's going on, even when it just like dissolves into sort of like shapes and colors, which I appreciate. You read this book.
It's one that didn't. I think I just read the first volume.
Yeah.
You're missing out.
Yeah, it's a good pitch.
I
Actually,
think.
oh, go ahead.
No.
Oh, the Jinx World stuff in general from like 30 years ago is so good too. Like if you read like Goldfish or Jinx itself or the Torso, like the Brian Michael Bendis like black and white run he did for a while, where it was just him experimenting with like noir and crime, real crime stuff. That it's good. It's really good.
Ultimate Spider-Man.
Ultimate Spider-Man's great too. Powers is fantastic. But I'm just saying, like, if you ever try his real world stuff, it's fun to do.
I am always surprised at how good his character writing can be because of how bad some of the mainstream titles are.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's just like a frustration with the sort of like studio style of writing that has to happen when you're dealing with a character that big who has kind of like a planned arc.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what about it doesn't really like work for him, or that his like his character development never really seems to fit in the same way. But I do appreciate that when he's like given the chance, he can write characters that are like heartbroken and compelling and real. And I wish we got to see more of that in all of his stories, but I'm glad that he had sort of like the microphone with which to do it.
I mean, like Ultimate Spider-Man and stuff. That's
So I feel like Alias is probably like my top pick by him.
Alias. That's true. His
is
Daredevil
terrific.
run's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm not saying always. I'm just saying in general.
I didn't read any of his DC stuff.
I was saying it's because some of his granted he very much reinvented Spider-Man with Ultimate Spider-Man, but like he's taken on mainstream characters like Daredevil and Spider-Man and done such good jobs. So like when he takes on mainstream characters currently, and it doesn't shine as much as like his Jinx World titles and his Alias and his Daredevil and stuff. It's like what's changed? Is it just like
Well, he's going with the mid-level, more humanizing characters, right? Like giving him Superman isn't probably the person to be like, hey, he's the guy to write that.
I guess like when the characters don't lend themselves to the type of vulnerability that we're seeing in like things like this, it does kind of like fall flat. I think he needs more room to show those cracks, and yeah, Superman isn't going to be the best best option.
What was the story in Superman? There was like a guy who really blew up Krypton or something?
Oh yeah, don't worry. You thought you knew who it was. It's actually this other guy, and he killed his planet and is also bringing back the multiverse or whatever.
Whoa.
Something I found so interesting about his Daredevil run is this very first arc of Daredevil with Alex Maleev barely has Daredevil in it. He's practically not there. It's like really weird, like watercolor stuff of oh my gosh, the cop. It's Ben Urich, not the reporter, like investigating like the murder of like some B-level villain Frogman that like Daredevil fought with, and like the young son of Frogman's involved and stuff. And Daredevil's like barely in the story. I'm like, that's a ballsy move to take your first run on a big name character and not have them there. But then, like shortly later, there's like a 5-issue arc where it's like a long arc where it's like Daredevil's not there. It's just like Matt Murdock defending Daredevil in court for like property damage. And like it's literally just that for 5 issues, and it bored me. But overall,
it doesn't always work.
It doesn't really work.
Jay?
I'm doing the career of Tom Manning.
I know.
Tom Manning, you sons of bitches. Let's go over it. Tom Manning. He writes stuff called like Eric, and I'm going to do Eric first because if we're doing another round,
backward?
I'll do a runoff. Tom Manning. He's a crazy person.
Is he actually a crazy person?
I'm going to say yes after reading his stuff.
All right.
There's a dog in my shot. Camera left, bud.
Cool. He doesn't know how cameras work. He's a dog.
No, he knows.
Welcome to the video, bud.
He's
Welcome
playing,
to the Sidekick Weekly poll.
he's playing.
Cooper can't read, so he's not going to say very much.
Cooper's favorite
look
comic
real
is
cute.
Bone by Jeff Smith.
No. He just likes the title.
Oh, kisses, thank
And
you.
his favorite TV show is Bones.
No.
Oh.
So predictable, Coop. Anyway.
Tom Manning's Eric. Tom Manning's career, I think he's Connecticut-based. I could be wrong on this, but he likes the woods because he is the comic book's version of David Lynch, in my opinion.
Nice. That's a good comparison.
Yes. Everything he does is black and white. He colors, inks. There's no colors. He inks pencils. He writes, and he does all the lettering himself. And to see like hand-drawn lettering, it's not typography. Like it's not a font. The guy's drawing his font. The guy's drawing his text.
It doesn't always work, but he's actually quite good at
It
it.
works 100%.
In
For this.
for him.
That's 100%.
I don't condone not getting a letterer, but he makes it work.
He makes it work. And it fits with the style, and the style he draws in is amorphous. It changes when the aesthetic needs it to, and that's really cool. But what the hell is he writing about? A whole bunch of stuff. Usually, Eric is strictly about like an Iggy Pop archetype. Who's a little bit of Carpenter's, who's a little bit of, he's got a lot of stuff going on. His name's Eric. And he's a burnt out. He's just riddled from a lifetime of drugs. And he can apparently sing at a frequency that puts him into an astral plane that is now at an interstice that is warring in a post-apocalyptic world where the Yosemite volcano exploded. I think that's what's going on.
It's never really clear.
It's clear. I think. No, I think that's what's happening.
No, I know, but I'm just saying, like, the fine details of what's happening in his work
Yes.
are kind of...
He won't hold your hand.
Yeah.
Much like David Lynch. But the thing is, it's different with David Lynch. There's no magical surrealism. It's not dream logic.
No.
Things are actually happening, and he's telling them in a way that is baffling to the characters, and you just have to like run with it or not.
Yeah, as confused as you may be, the characters are too.
Yes, and it's engineered. It's by design. And they're weird and funny, and you won't see art like this anywhere else. What he does with blacks and
it does
paneling.
remind me of things like Black Hole, a little bit like Sacred Heart, like heavy blacks, gray overlays only sometimes.
Yes, at night everything's grayed overlaid.
Yeah. Atmospheric, but not necessarily like not caricature either.
Mm-hmm.
It exists somewhere between like realism and cartoon.
Yeah, but if you want to read, I'm going to go to his magnum opus Runoff later on, but like if you want to read anything that's just like uncompromised creative a creative endeavor that's totally uncompromised, I'm going to recommend stuff like this. It's just nice to see the rough edges. It's kind of like when you watch Mandy and you're kind of like, wow, I really would have cut like a minute ago from the shop, but they're kind of doing it anyway. And if you just like that tenacity of artistic creativity.
Yeah, you can feel like everything's an artistic choice, which I appreciate.
It's all measured, I think. But it's loose at the same time. I'm not sure what he's trying to say, but there's a lot of themes swirling around there that are consistent, and that's something to applaud. Yes. Part 1 on that.
Back to me. So next one I'm gonna talk about is this nifty little book I picked up in like a $3 bin called Colossus.
Gotta love those $3
I knew
bins.
absolutely nothing about it, but it was $3 and it looked cool, so I bought it, and I was not disappointed. So Colossus is by Mark Andrews. As far as I know, it is his only comic book.
Really?
It's definitely his first, if not his only. He works primarily as a storyboard artist for Pixar, and was like
that's
the
fun.
story supervisor for The Incredibles. So like he's in that world. But then he like made this book where the art, I would call it like a Mignola-esque mixed with Quentin Blake, like the illustrator
Maybe
from.
a little bit of Noel Stevenson.
Yes.
Yeah.
But like I see so much of Quentin Blake in here, like the guy who illustrated Roald Dahl's books that I grew up with.
Yeah.
But it's like a tale of a hero, like sort of Greek myth in style, where it was like he was a paladin whose soul was trapped in like this iron suit of armor. So he just sort of roams the countryside now, like solving people's problems for bags of gold, which he like in turn uses the gold to like repair his body. But he seems to be like a benevolent, like people like leave out things for him to do, and then like he overpays the blacksmith. He's like always like, oh, this is too much money. He's like, oh, you do good work. But essentially what happens in this little short story here, because it's not very long, but it's really good, compact, is that like another paladin comes back from like a holy war in another land, but he's a bad dude. He's not a good paladin, and he's gonna scheme to like take out the king and marry the king's daughter and like assert himself at the head. And a Colossus isn't gonna let that happen.
Wow.
So it's very much just like a tale of this paladin sort of like killing people, and like there's some adult. There's some like a bit of upsetting sexual content at some point.
Yeah.
But it's just to get the point across. I guess this bad guy is a bad dude. He doesn't really redeem himself at all. He's just like evil all throughout this. Somebody like waves on him and at the road, and he cuts off their arm. Like he's just
the
evil.
worst.
Yeah. And it's just a really cool black and white story. One thing that's interesting is it was drawn completely on a computer, and it does not look like it was.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Did not,
Oh.
does not look like
Really?
Yep.
The marker stuff has marker.
That's what I read online. So unless they
Wow.
lied to me.
Huh?
But yeah, but it's a weird. Like I don't know where you'd find this. Like it's published by Crazy Fish, who I've never heard of.
Crazy Fish.
All right.
MJ12.
Interesting.
We're on to you.
Yeah, this seems like maybe a self-published or self-bound book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did find another when I was trying to find information about it online. I saw other covers of it,
Oh.
but it also has some like concept art at the back by like Mike Mignola drew Colossus. So like obviously this book had a bit of attention.
Yeah.
And then like Troy Nixie has a pin up at the end as well. I'm going to talk about Mike Mignola and Troy Nixie a bit more later as well. They pop up on my list again.
What?
Yeah, I know, Hidden Gems by little-known indie creator Mike Mignola. But yeah, it's a cool book that I could
Wow.
not find much on. So,
great.
like, if you see Colossus by Mark Andrews sitting anywhere, oh yeah, and
Scoop it up.
I wanted to mention because you were talking about how the hand-drawn typography works
Yeah.
really well in that book. I hate the font in this book. The lettering is just does
that's
not.
like
It's like
Comic
off.
Sans.
Yeah, it's like
That is literally Comic Sans.
Yeah, and it's like sits off center of the speech bubbles. Something about the lettering in this book does not fit.
Someone
That
went
is-
in on a very early Windows computer and just like
typed like.
And it's kind of small.
Yeah, it's like an
Yeah.
8.5.
It doesn't fit.
It does not give enough. It gives inconsistent amounts of room inside the speech bubbles, which is like.
That's how you know it's.
Yeah, you should let Allison look at this because she'll have conniption.
There's a paladin trapped in an iron body. There's an evil paladin. There's a wizard. There's a blacksmith. There's a kingdom in peril.
Aces.
Check it out.
That checks all the boxes.
All the boxes. I'm going to talk about Sacred Heart and Egg Cream by Liz Suburbia. So I once described Sacred Heart as like a dystopian, better version of Scott Pilgrim. It describes a main character who is going through high school in the landscape of a small suburban town that all of the adults have gone missing suddenly, and the kids assume that they'll be back, so they're staying in their houses, they're trying to cook for themselves. They still go to school even though there are no classes. So it's like vaguely the structure of a teenage life.
But they don't tell you that off the bat.
No.
So you just start reading like, what the hell's going on?
Yeah, it just seems sort of off. That no one has jobs. Everyone's just showing up to stuff, and slowly through the narrative, you kind of can piece together the fact that all the adults have went missing, and the kids are not all right. But it's a really cool story following like a bunch of like sort of forgotten teens who are just trying to figure it out, doing teen stuff, drinking in the woods, watching movies, hanging out,
smoking apple pipes,
having crushes on each other, don't know what to do. It's really, really good. The caricatures of the characters are like clean and like, I don't know, everyone has like a different shape of face or nose or style of hair. Like it's very, very clear who's who, even though the style is very simple. I really enjoyed it.
Who did Black Hole?
I forget his name.
But it reminds me of that.
Yeah.
When it comes to the art, where like there's nothing sketchy or.
No, it's
all
not.
very symmetrical and.
Yeah,
clean.
it's not loose, and I really, really enjoyed it. So I read this, loved it to death, waited, and then a few months ago, almost a year ago now maybe, the companion piece came out called Sacred Heart, Egg Cream. So this is the companion, so it's the loose sequel to Sacred Heart, where they sort of describe what happened and the sort of setting of Sacred Heart through interviews with the characters as adults and news reports about this town that got abandoned. So the adults from this town joined a cult, and the cult leader led them all away saying that the kids will be fine, we're gonna go off and do something else, and we'll come back to that, and then they didn't. So most of the adults killed themselves or whatever. It was not a good cult. I don't know if they're all good cults. But yeah, they left all their kids behind, and then it's just interviews now with the kids who sort of grew up there.
It's a good follow-up.
Being okay with it, not okay with it, are they okay now? There's also a few little autobiographical cartoons by Liz just sprinkled in there for flavor, which I really, really enjoy. She has a great sense of humor and an amazing style, so I always love that. It's actually really effective for how cartoony it is, the like news report stuff.
Was that an Abraham Lincoln from
Yes.
Whatchamacallit High.
Yes.
What are they
Clone
doing
High.
there? What are the Clone High
This
characters?
is the motif of changing channels and then getting to the news report. If you're reading it, it makes a little bit more sense, I swear. But it's interesting to see the characters that were in there grown up now. It's definitely like a very cool way of showing the progression. I really liked that because I felt like Sacred Heart was very complete outside of the fact that it doesn't sort of explain where you are and what the context of the story is.
And there's kind of a, not supernatural, but kind of like a
I think
abnormal ending.
There's a flood, but like it's because of like lack of upkeep of infrastructure. So they get into that a little bit here.
Gotcha.
By the end it's not clear sort of
they kind of
what
like
happens.
they hint at like a divine intervention-y thing.
Okay. So if you think you like sort of like ambient apocalyptic books about teens,
which is very, of the times.
It's definitely a book for our times, but I really enjoyed the art. I thought the characters were like snarky enough to make them real teenagers, but not without.
They're naive still.
Yeah,
they're still
without like some sort of like semblance of trying to make things better, of caring about each other even when they're bad at it, of trying to figure out things like their sexuality, like, and how to sort of like structure themselves so they don't just go insane without anything to do. Like, I just thought that it has a tone that a lot of things try to land, but not a lot manages to. So I can't recommend this book enough. And the companion piece.
2 questions.
Yes.
Why is it called egg cream? Second question, right off the bat, can we try egg creams while we're in the pajama apocalypse?
First one, I don't know, and second one, sure, but it doesn't sound like they're very good.
It's seltzer water and milk, Chris.
Gross.
Why wouldn't you want to try one?
Harrison looks horrified.
You're mixing chocolate and sugar. Like it's not.
I was going to say, you just described carbonated milk.
Yeah.
Gross.
Carbonated skim milk because you're mixing it with water.
You're not helping your case.
Think of all the nutrition you get out of it.
None, probably.
Probably none. I have 5 minutes. I'm gonna make it the best 5 minutes of your life, YouTube and/or the website. Run Off by Tom Manning, because I'm on my Tom Manning kick right now, because he's the man. Run Off. I am fortunate enough to actually have the all 3 books. You can only
individual
books. You can only collect it in the one book that they have right now, which is a complete series.
Which we also have in the house.
Which we also have in the house. I got it for her. As one of the first gifts. But this is the first thing he produced, and it is a very David Lynchian thing. It's a small town. All of a sudden, you can't leave it, or you can't enter it. Cars cannot get to this small town. You cannot leave the small town. If you're in it, you can walk on this road, and you'll just never walk. The horizon won't change, and the background will split, and this town behind you will stay in the same distance, no matter how far. So you're stuck.
So it's not like an under the dome snap.
No.
It's more. It's kind of like the farm in Black Hammer, except for you're not randomly there. Like you've lived here or you've traveled here on purpose, and now suddenly you can't leave.
And then gradually, the weird things start to happen, and then they gradually get more exponentially crazier.
The supernatural elements in this book just like ramp up to this weird crescendo.
For a while, you could be like, "Is this supposed to be like folklore? This kind of happened somewhere?" And then, oh, all right, no, we're just out of this.
We're bananas.
Yeah. So there's a murderer running around for a little while, and at the same time, incongruent, a little like smiley cube thing shows up and kind of floats around, and people are like, "What the?" And it's a small town, so people are just kind of confused, and they don't really know how to handle this, so they're doing their best. And then it turns out it's under some kind of weird cult thing. I won't get too much further than that, but it gets hyper violent, hyper fast.
Hyper violent. All the wildlife sort of is sentient.
Wildlife starts to become sentient. Ghosts start to show up.
Yeah.
It's like.
And then there's some Universal Monsters stuff.
Yeah. But since this is Tom Manning's first thing, you can see his art style evolve. It starts off really, really sketchy and kind of weird and not great, but like.
It's just not as clean.
He's not gonna get hired by Marvel.
He's not gonna get, but you see him.
You only get better at comics by making comics, and by the end.
And you watch him do it, and then by the end of it, he's like a maestros.
Can I borrow these?
Yeah, of course. Sweet. And then
yeah, we've added another format.
Right. So if you feel more comfortable lending the other format, that's cool too.
Yeah. But legitimately, one of my favorite artistic endeavors is having him run off. I love it to death. It's an aesthetic you don't really see very often. It's like a love letter to driving at night.
Yeah, I understand.
You know when you get spooked out at driving at night by yourself for a while, like on a lone, dusty road, and for some reason you just get spooked out because you think like the Jersey Devil's gonna jump out, or like you're gonna see something. It's that in a comic. And it's really well done, and everything kind of fits together, but it's also abstract, and it's gorgeously put together.
I also love how funny it is at times. Like, there's a Calvin and Hobbes style gag with bears.
Yes.
Where they're talking to each other, and you're not really sure if this is just like a side piece, and then it intersects with the actual narrative. And then there's also like this very silly vaudevillian mayor who's
Mayor Balduino.
Balduino.
But it's spelled Balduino. I'm assuming Balduino, yeah.
And he's like up for re-election, and because things get so crazy, they just want someone who they recognize, because there were like other contenders, and they were like, oh, Balduino's been the mayor of this town forever, maybe we're up for a change, and then things go insane, and people are just like, now we just want like the guy who's been here. And like then the person who was running gets really upset about that, like he almost had it, and that's just like the backdrop to the actual plot of the story. But like the sort of like the use of how silly people can be in a crisis is so enjoyable.
Yes, and it just spreads itself everywhere. Because like as funny as it is sometimes, and or as violent as it is sometimes, it's also terrifying. Like this book legitimately scared me with certain scenes in it. And it's so weird. You're not going to see anything like this. It's like something you find by accident under a bridge when you're like 12, and you're like, "What is this? What's this next to the porn? Run off! I'll read that."
And then you're like, ugh.
And then you're like, "What the fuck is this?" And then you try to find it, and it doesn't exist anywhere. And you're like, "Why is this happening to me?" And you start seeing weird things at night, and then you're like, "What? I don't know what's going on with my life."
You're gonna be okay.
Should have taken the porn instead.
Yeah, I should have taken the porn, but I took Run Off instead. Thank
And
God.
he's better for it.
Sorry, porn trolls. They're the trolls that leave porn out for kids to find under bridges.
God bless them.
Yeah, they've been doing God's work since porn existed.
Right next to the gnomes that steal your clothes.
No, we have to say goodbye. We're out of stuff. We're not here. We can talk forever on the thing, but we're almost out of stuff.
Oh, we're out of room?
We're out of room.
Okay, we're out of room. So next time on Hidden Gems.
Yeah. Wow, we're still going.
Next time on Hidden Gems, we'll get to the rest of this material.
Cooper, go say goodbye.
This was the Sidekick Hidden Gems.
Bye. Thank you.